What's going on, guys? I'm Zach from the Lumiose Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we're going to be talking about what exactly happened to cause Area Zero, the Terastal phenomenon, all that fun stuff. We kind of already did this, which is in this video, which you're more than welcome to check out, but this is going to kind of be revisiting that theory and kind of re-explaining it. You know, that theory was done just solely based off of the knowledge of the Terastal gimmick and the map of Paldea, but we had not yet played the game, so, you know, now that we have it, we've got more ideas formulating on the Lumiose Post side of things, so now I'm re-evaluated it all, and I'm coming back with another theory. And I still think that, yeah, AZ's ultimate weapon kind of caused all this. Now, many people have pointed out to me, and they are exactly right, that the Great Crater of Paldea has been around for like 1,000,000 years. So it predates the ultimate weapon hitting Paldea, which is about 3,000 years ago, right? So 1,000,000's more than 3,000. So Area Zero, or the Great Crater of Paldea rather, was not caused by the ultimate weapon. But I think that Area Zero was, and allow me to explain. I think that's interesting that they gave the Great Crater of Paldea is one name, and then Area Zero is another name. That's the location inside the Great Crater of Paldea. And I think that what happened was, yes, there was the Great Crater of Paldea millions of years ago. And then I think the Kalos War happened, and AZ was fighting against Paldea. So it was Kalos versus Paldea in the Great War. And AZ lost his Floette and launched his ultimate weapon onto Paldea, aiming for a big city somewhere kind of towards the center of Paldea, because that's where often capitals are, and he just happened to be a little bit off and hit the Great Crater of Paldea, which is smack dab in the middle of Paldea. This was still enough to cause dire consequences. I mean, think about when a nuclear bomb goes off, it kind of doesn't just hurt the area the bomb is dropped, it spreads. I mean, it takes out a good bit of the area, and so that is what the ultimate weapon did. This also would have further deepened the crater, making it a little bit less cratery and more like a hole, and that's kind of how we got Area Zero. Now, my thought process and why Area Zero was caused by this is, for one, I think it's interesting that they called it Area Zero. We have a term here in the real world that we call Ground Zero. This is kind of the point on Earth's surface where there was some kind of explosion. Usually this is in reference to a nuclear bomb, but we have seen it used in our world in reference to other things. Like Ground Zero is where they call the area in New York where the Twin Towers collapsed on September 11th, 2001. So that is, you know, a non-nuclear bomb example of a Ground Zero. But either way, Ground Zero does also refer to nuclear bombs. So why can't Area Zero be kind of Pokemon's version of that? They call this Area Zero because it was the area that was hit by the ultimate weapon. And perhaps this is the reason why it was kind of so unexplorable and so kind of, you know, not like legally forbidden, but very much, I guess, culturally forbidden for the people of Paldea, is because, you know, that's where the ultimate weapon striked. We don't know what kind of radiation could be left there, because think about how the ultimate weapon, which is clearly a kind of allusion to the real world nuclear bombs, it probably left behind some radiation, much like how nuclear bombs do in our world. So this new Area Zero is forbidden kind of to go to. It's very dangerous. We don't know what's down there and all this. Now, what happened, though, was that the ultimate weapon caused these more crystalline, like, structures and rocks and all to appear in the Great Crater of Paldea, in what is now Area Zero. Also, perhaps this even mutated a Pokemon that was slumbering down there. This Pokemon would later be known as kind of the third legendary of Scarlet and Violet. We haven't seen it yet, but we do know that it exists. It'll probably be coming in some form of DLC, and it is said to be kind of connected to the Terastal phenomenon. It's also quite possible that this even mutated a Pokemon that formed Glamora, as Glamora is noted to kind of have some similarities to Terra Shards, so I imagine that's the case as well. So this ultimately would kind of snowball into the Terastal phenomenon, right? Which makes sense because the Terastal phenomenon is this total change in Pokemon. It even involves a kind of genetic thing called a Terra type, which is kind of hidden DNA in the Pokemon that the Terastal gimmick brings out. All of this can be explained by radiation. You know, we see how nuclear radiation can actually cause some genetic mutations in our own world with things like, for example, fish with 3 eyes, or deer with 2 heads, or etc. I mean, there's a ton of like really freaky stuff that you can see in like Chernobyl pictures if you Google that. But yeah, it's very possible that this could be kind of Pokemon's take on that. I will also say Area Zero can be abbreviated to AZ. Now, personally, I do think that's kind of a weaker point, but I do think that, you know, there is a chance that they kind of named the place the ultimate weapon struck after the king that fired the weapon on them. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's a little off because, like, you know, you don't really name areas that a bomb was dropped after the areas, or after the people that dropped the bomb on you, you know? But that's a whole nother thing. I do think it's also important to note that look at the ultimate weapon. The ultimate weapon is very crystalline in appearance. I mean, this picture looks no different, really, than the pictures of the crystals that you see in Area Zero. So, I don't know, that can't be a coincidence to me. Now, that's when we kind of get into the plot of Scarlet and Violet, which I think actually backs this up. The professors have built a time machine down in Area Zero in Scarlet and Violet, and I will also note, if you look at that time machine, it also has that same crystalline appearance, and I imagine that is because this time machine is powered by infinite energy, which is the same thing that the ultimate weapon was powered by. So it makes sense that infinite energy, which was used to power the ultimate weapon, would be left behind in the area that the ultimate weapon strikes, because it's basically just taking that infinite energy and shooting it out. So of course, that is kind of, again, we go back to the radiation, you know, nuclear bombs are powered by nuclear energy and they leave behind nuclear radiation, while the ultimate weapon was powered by infinite energy and leaves behind infinite radiation. And again, the professors would use this to power their time machine. That's probably why the time machine was built in Area Zero, why they chose to build it there. Because we know the professors' goal was to be able to allow these Paradox Pokemon to go out into Paldea and live amongst other Pokemon. Well, then why not build it out there? You create it in a crater where it's kind of hard for them to get out. Well, it's all because that infinite energy is down there. There's a surplus of it. It's the best place to build the time machine because it won't work anywhere else because that infinite energy is not there. Now, we also go into infinite energy being kind of behind Mega Evolution, and I've done a whole theory kind of explaining how this works, which I highly recommend you check out. But basically, infinite energy would allow Pokemon to Mega Evolve, and these Pokemon, their Mega Evolutions, are nothing more than just latent DNA from their ancestors, their paradoxes, if you will, and bringing out some of the traits of those ancestors or paradox. So a great example of this is Salamence. We see when Salamence Mega Evolves, it gets this new appearance that looks very, very similar to a Paradox Salamence, or Roaring Moon as it is called in Pokemon Scarlet. Now, this would only apply to the ancient paradoxes we see in Pokemon Scarlet, not the future ones in Pokemon Violet, because obviously a Pokemon can't have DNA from something that hasn't even existed yet, right? So, all that considered, it makes sense that the energy used to bring out the kind of primal state of these Pokemon, these ancestral DNA of them, would also be the same energy used to revert time. You're, with Mega Evolution, basically reverting time in a Pokemon and allowing it to access its more ancestral DNA, And so with this time machine the professors have built, they're reverting the kind of space-time to bring in these ancestral paradox Pokemon, or in Toro's case, he was also using this infinite energy to just manipulate time to where he could bring out future Pokemon as well. So all that said, I think that there's really a good case for the ultimate weapon causing Area Zero. Again, not the Great Crater of Paldea, that was already there, but Area Zero, the crystal structures, the Terastal phenomenon, and the infinite energy that the professors were able to utilize to create their time machine. Also, kind of affecting the third legendary that we're going to see in Scarlet and Violet DLC to allow him to create the Terastal gimmick. So, yeah, let me know what you think of this in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Talk about all things Pokemon here, and we're doing a lot of theories right now because I've got a ton of them after playing through Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. You don't want to miss that. So again, like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Until next time, I will see all of you later.